Have you ever shown people the real you and watched their respect vanish in an instant? You speak, but their eyes glaze over as if you've already been judged and filed away. The danger isn't your intelligence or your effort. It's the little things you don't notice, your tone, your body language, even the way you hesitate. Those small signals decide whether doors open for you or slam shut forever. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Men weren't destroyed by lack of talent, but because others could read them too easily. But the moment you erase those habits and control the first impression, the roles reverse. They hesitate, and you take command. By the end, you'll know how to strip away the signals that cost you power and replace them with the ones that make people stop, listen, and follow. Stay with me, not to be yourself, but to become the man no one dares to dismiss. Men are told from birth to seek authenticity, to be themselves, to embrace whatever fragile impulses rise within them, as though those impulses were sacred truths. This is the great lie of weak societies. It is a philosophy invented not to strengthen but to soften, to make men harmless, predictable, and therefore governable. When a man is himself, he exposes his true nature, and nothing is easier to exploit than an open book. If your thoughts are written upon your face, your desires revealed in every gesture, your ambitions confessed in every word, then you are no prince, you are prey. The world is not a sanctuary where the soul blossoms freely. It is a battlefield where the one who hides his hand strikes the decisive blow. Thus, the doctrine of being yourself is the doctrine of disarmament, of walking naked into the arena where lions devour. The man who prides himself on sincerity makes himself a spectacle. He dies applauded for his honesty, but he still dies. Consider what men really are. They are not noble creatures thirsting for truth, but selfish, fearful animals swayed by appearances, by their appetites, by their dread of pain. To be yourself among them is to hand them a map of your weaknesses. A prince who reveals his doubts is not admired for candor, he is despised as fragile. A man who shows his hunger is not pitied, he is starved further by those who now know where to strike. In politics, in commerce, in love, the rule is the same. You do not confess, you do not expose, you do not bear the inner self to the multitude. You wear the mask, you fashion the disguise, you create the illusion most useful to your ambition. That is survival, that is power. A ruler who insists on being himself soon discovers that his self is less valuable than the role he must play. The fox does not announce that he is sly, the lion does not confess his fears. Each simply acts, and in acting they endure. The greatest men of history never wasted themselves in self-expression. They became who necessity demanded they be. Caesar Borgia did not rise by proclaiming his insecurities or inviting the world into his heart. He rose because he concealed, deceived, struck when least expected, and discarded sentiment when it obstructed his climb. To those who preach authenticity, this may seem monstrous, but to those who rule, it is the only path. Virtue, the strength and cunning that command fortune, is not born from indulging one's nature, but from mastering it. To be yourself is to be enslaved by whims. To rule is to be whoever the situation requires. If cruelty secures the throne, cruelty is virtue. If mercy gains loyalty, mercy is virtue. Identity is not essence but weapon, and only a fool arms his enemies by wielding his identity unsharpened. You are told to be yourself because society thrives when men are predictable, when they march according to their nature without disguise or cunning. A populace that bears its heart is easily governed, easily taxed, easily deceived. The shepherds of men, priests, merchants, rulers, preach authenticity precisely because it makes their flock compliant. A man who suppresses his true nature, who wears masks, who bends himself into forms required by power, is dangerous. He cannot be read. He cannot be manipulated with ease. He cannot be disarmed by praise or shamed by rebuke. Therefore, he must be told that he is false, that he betrays his soul, that only in bearing his weaknesses is he virtuous. But strip away this pious fraud and you will see every king, every statesman, every general, every merchant who triumphed did so not by being himself but by creating himself anew, by constructing an identity suited for domination. The true sin is not in deception but in naivety. Even love, which poets exalt as the sanctuary of authenticity, is infected by this rule. Lovers claim to want the true self, but in reality, they demand performance. A man who exposes every flaw, every weakness, Every doubt soon loses the devotion of those who once adored him. They grow bored, or worse, contemptuous. Love persists not by naked truth, but by artifice, by maintaining an image that sustains desire. Just as a prince must appear merciful while secretly wielding cruelty, so too must the lover appear endlessly fascinating, restrained, controlled. Those who are themselves in love collapse into mediocrity, and their lovers abandon them for more compelling illusions. It is not hypocrisy that sustains passion, but mastery of appearance. And if even love, the most intimate of human relations, requires this theater, how much more must the theater dominate in politics and power? Understand, then, that authenticity is a luxury for the powerless. The farmer may be himself as he tills his soil. The craftsman may be himself as he carves his wood. Their survival does not depend on masks, for they are not predators but prey. But the man who aspires to command, to shape events, to bend others to his will, he forfeits the right to self-expression. He must become unreadable, inexhaustible, malleable to necessity. He must learn to smile when enraged, to flatter when he despises, to conceal when he plots. The authenticity that philosophers praise and poets celebrate is poison to the prince. If he drinks it, he weakens himself before wolves. If he rejects it, he becomes the wolf. In this way, the choice is not between honesty and deceit, but between power and impotence. The truth is harsh but liberating. Men cling to authenticity because it absolves them of effort. It is easy to be yourself, to surrender to whatever impulse stirs within. It requires no discipline, no calculation, no mastery of self. But greatness is never easy. To rise above the mass of men, one must sculpt oneself like marble, chisel away weaknesses, polish the exterior, and present to the world not the crude stone of nature, but the crafted statue of necessity. To be yourself is to stagnate. To remake yourself endlessly is to ascend. Fortune, that capricious goddess, does not favor the authentic. She favors the prepared, the adaptable, the man who can become fox or lion as the moment demands. And the man who insists on being himself will find himself broken against her wheel. So cast aside the childish command to be yourself. It is the creed of the weak, the lullaby sung to slaves. Instead, be ruthless with your identity. Mold it, shape it, conceal it, weaponize it. Show the world not who you are, but who it must believe you to be. And when that illusion has served its purpose, discard it and fashion another. This is the path of power, the art of survival, the essence of rule. Authenticity belongs in sermons and fairy tales. In the realm of men, where ambition claws and fortune turns, the only command worth obeying is this: do not be yourself, be whatever conquers. And if you still hesitate, still cling to the comfort of believing that being yourself will somehow protect you, consider the fate of those who ruled unwisely by mistaking transparency for strength. History is a graveyard of princes undone not by their enemies, but by their own candor. The ruler who trusted too much in honesty found betrayal in every corner. The man who displayed his intentions invited conspiracies before his plans matured. The one who wore his heart upon his sleeve became a spectacle for vultures. Recall that men are not angels, they are wolves, circling, hungry, waiting for the smallest sign of weakness. To be yourself is to bleed in front of them, to show where the knife may sink deepest. No oath, no friendship, no love will restrain them once they have glimpsed the soft flesh beneath your armor. Think of those who seized power, not through authenticity, but through artifice. They cloaked their designs in noble words, professed loyalty while preparing betrayal, embraced allies only to later cast them down. And yet, these are the names remembered, carved into stone, written in chronicles, whispered in fear. Why? Because they understood that survival belongs not to the sincere, but to the cunning. The stage of politics, like the stage of life, rewards the actor, not the confessor. You may despise this truth, you may call it cruel, but cruelty is the marrow of the world. The honest man is consumed, the adaptable man consumes. The mask is not a lie, it is a tool sharper than steel. One who refuses to wear it is no different than a soldier refusing his shield in battle. What is this self you are told to cherish so dearly? Is it not a bundle of appetites, a collection of fears, a mess of contradictions formed by chance, childhood and circumstance? To worship this bundle as though it were divine is absurd. The self is clay, unshaped, unformed, brittle. The man who worships it remains clay forever. The man who rejects it who reshapes himself into iron, into marble, into the form required by power. He becomes sovereign not only over others, but over himself. He does not wait for the world to accept him. He imposes himself upon the world. And when the time comes to discard one identity for another, he does so without sentiment, because his allegiance is not to self, but to dominion. Do not misunderstand. This is not a call to chaos, to endless deception for its own sake. It is a call to discipline. It is easy to confess, to speak freely, to indulge one's impulses. It is difficult to remain silent when mocked, to smile when boiling with hatred, to flatter when longing to destroy. But the prince must master this difficulty. He must learn to wear a mask so well that even he forgets what lies beneath. This is not hypocrisy, it is strength. For while the common man trembles at disapproval, the ruler knows that disapproval can be manipulated, that perception is clay in his hand, that appearances bend reality itself, and if reality refuses to bend, it can be broken. To those who preach that being yourself leads to happiness, I say, happiness is a mirage for the masses, a bribe to keep them docile. A ruler is not concerned with happiness, but with power. Power alone provides security. Power alone commands respect. Power alone ensures survival when fortune turns savage. And power does not belong to the man who bears his soul. It belongs to the man who conceals it, shapes it, weaponizes it. Happiness is the bread fed to sheep. Power is the feast of lions. Which table do you wish to sit at? If you choose the feast, abandon authenticity. If you choose the pasture, then be yourself and wait for the slaughter. Men will call you false, insincere, ruthless. Let them. Their tongues are weapons of envy, their judgments disguises for weakness. They condemn in others what they secretly desire for themselves. Do not seek their approval, seek their obedience, seek their fear, seek their reluctant admiration when, despite all their condemnation, they kneel before your strength. And when they ask how you achieved it, you must never confess that you rejected authenticity. Let them believe you are natural, destined, authentic in your greatness. Even the mask must be masked. Let the illusion be complete. So the lesson is clear. To be yourself is to chain yourself. To abandon yourself is to be free. The prince is not born, he is forged. He is lion and fox, mask and dagger, cruelty and mercy bound together. He is whatever necessity commands him to be. And because he is everything, he is untouchable. To be yourself is the worst thing you can do because it confines you to one form, one mask, one destiny. But the world belongs not to those who are one thing, fixed and fragile. It belongs to those who can be many, fluid and ungraspable. Remember this when you are tempted by the siren song of authenticity. The song leads to ruin. The silence of cunning leads to dominion. The man who insists on being himself also insists, without knowing it, on being predictable. Predictability is a death sentence in politics, in war, in love, in commerce. The opponent who knows your moves before you make them has already defeated you. The rival who anticipates your desires can manipulate you like a puppet. The lover who discerns your weaknesses will withdraw affection when it wounds you most. To be predictable is to be controlled, and to be controlled is to be enslaved. Freedom does not come from honesty, it comes from opacity. A ruler who cannot be read cannot be undone. A man who is unreadable commands respect, because uncertainty breeds caution, and caution in your enemies is the first form of victory. Consider how appearances bend men's wills. If you appear merciful, even when you are ruthless, men will praise your kindness and offer their loyalty. If you appear strong, even when weak, conspiracies will wither for fear of your retribution. If you appear devout, even while mocking the heavens in your heart, men will follow you as though God himself has ordained your reign. And if you appear inevitable, they will not resist at all. They will bow before you before your sword is even drawn. This is the essence of rule, not to be, but to appear, not to reveal, but to conceal, not to display yourself honestly, but to project whatever image secures advantage. To reject this law in favor of authenticity is to cast away the most potent weapon a man can wield. Those who cling to authenticity believe that truth has some natural power that compels respect. They are deceived. Truth without power is a beggar's confession, heard by all, respected by none, and soon forgotten. Power shapes what men accept as truth, and appearances determine what they believe. A prince who insists on truth over appearance discovers quickly that men do not care for his sincerity, but only for the spectacle he provides. They judge not by what they experience, but by what they see. If you doubt this, look at history. Tyrants adorned themselves in robes of virtue and were adored, while honest men who exposed their flaws were cast down, mocked, or destroyed. It is not justice that prevails, but perception. The authentic man trusts justice, the powerful man manufactures it. Let us descend deeper into the anatomy of deception. To master power, you must learn to act against your impulses. When anger rises, conceal it until its release will destroy most effectively. When fear grips you, bury it until it can be wielded as cunning caution. When love tempts you to confess, restrain yourself, for confession is surrender. The discipline of concealment is the training ground of rulers. Every word you utter must be calculated, every gesture rehearsed, every silence loaded with meaning. Authenticity has no place in this theater. The mask must become your true face, and yet you will be called false. Understand that this is praise in disguise, for when men call you false, it is only because they cannot pierce your armor, cannot predict your moves, cannot control you. It is said that cruelty should be swift, and mercy should be visible. Why? Because cruelty, though necessary, breeds hatred if prolonged, while mercy, even if feigned, breeds loyalty when displayed. This principle reveals again the fatal flaw of authenticity. The authentic ruler might prolong cruelty because he feels justified, or hide mercy because he feels pride. But the wise ruler suppresses himself. He is not guided by feelings, but by results. He appears merciful when it profits him, cruel when it secures him, and at all times he disguises the calculation beneath the act. Thus men praise his virtue while living in fear of his strength. He rules not by being himself, but by mastering the appearances that shape men's judgments. The masses do not crave authenticity. They crave security, order, and the illusion of meaning. They will chant slogans they do not believe, adore rulers they secretly despise, and repeat lies they know to be false, so long as those lies are clothed in grandeur and certainty. Why then should a ruler be authentic when those he governs are not? To descend into sincerity among liars is not noble, it is suicidal. The prince must be the greatest liar of all, not out of vanity but out of necessity, because the survival of his state demands it. And if he must betray promises, abandon allies, or shatter treaties, he does so not with apology, but with the calm of a surgeon cutting rot from flesh. The wound bleeds, but the body survives. Authenticity would forbid the cut. Power requires it. So ask yourself, what is more valuable, to live as yourself and die forgotten, or to construct yourself, discard yourself, and rise as legend? Fortune does not reward the authentic, but the adaptive. And men, despite their praise of honesty, do not remember those who were true to themselves. They remember those who conquered, those who ruled, those who bent the world to their design. To be yourself is to submit to fate. To abandon yourself is to seize it. Do not be seduced by those who preach that authenticity is noble, for nobility without power is a mask of another kind, the mask of impotence. What is nobler? To cling to purity and perish nameless, or to shape yourself into the instrument through which history bends? The world does not remember the authentic shepherd. It remembers the cunning prince. It does not glorify the honest beggar who exposed his soul, but the ruler who cloaked himself in necessary deception and carved dominion out of chaos. Men claim to love truth, but they kneel before power, and the only truth they honor is the one enforced by the sword. To be yourself is to deny this law. It is to embrace weakness and call it virtue. But weakness disguised as virtue does not change its nature. It still collapses before the storm. Reflect on the nature of loyalty. Men are not bound to you by your true self, but by what they believe you to be. They are loyal because you appear strong, because you seem merciful, because they think you are chosen, not because of the tangled impulses that make up your authentic soul. Strip away those appearances, and their loyalty vanishes like smoke. If you are yourself angry, insecure, uncertain, they will despise you. But if you appear composed, commanding, unshakable, they will follow you into fire. Thus, loyalty is not tied to reality, but to illusion. And if illusion is the foundation of loyalty, then the wise ruler does not expose himself. He constructs himself, refashions himself, and gives men the image they demand, while keeping the truth buried beneath layers no eye may pierce. There are those who say that to deceive others is immoral. They are correct, but their morality is an invention designed to protect themselves, not you. When they call deceit wicked, it is because they wish to bind your hands, to make you predictable, to make you transparent. They do not refrain from deception themselves, they simply wish you to. Morality is a tool of control, and authenticity is its chain. Once you reject both, you discover a freedom that terrifies the weak. You realize that the judgment of others is a ghost, that praise and blame are weapons of manipulation, and that the only true measure of an action is whether it succeeds. The authentic man drowns in guilt when necessity forces his hand. The ruler breathes freely, for he has long abandoned the burden of conscience. Remember also that fear is more reliable than love. Men may claim to love the authentic you, but their love is fickle, their admiration fleeting. The moment your authenticity no longer entertains or benefits them, they will turn away. But fear, properly wielded, endures. A prince who cultivates fear, not hatred but disciplined fear, holds a power authenticity can never provide. Fear compels obedience even when love has cooled. Fear endures even when admiration fades. And if that fear is masked with occasional gestures of mercy, men will confuse it for loyalty. The authentic man asks to be loved for who he is. The ruler demands obedience regardless of who he is, which then commands more security, which ensures survival when conspiracies form and enemies gather. The self is fragile. It wavers under insult, trembles before rejection, collapses under failure. If you anchor your power to this fragile self, you will fall with it. But if you anchor your power to masks, to appearances, to the disciplined ability to adapt, then no insult can pierce you, no rejection can shake you, no failure can define you, because the mask can always change. You are not one self but many, shifting, evolving, discarding forms as they become useless. Authenticity chains you to one identity, but cunning grants you 1,000. And the man who can be 1,000 things cannot be destroyed. For to destroy him in one form is to see him reappear in another, as inevitable as the turning of fortune's wheel. Thus the creed of authenticity is revealed as a creed of surrender. It is the philosophy of sheep who mistake their docility for virtue. The strong know better. They know that to survive among wolves, one must sometimes howl like a wolf, sometimes hunt like a lion, sometimes wait like a fox. Identity is not essence but weapon, sharpened, concealed, and revealed only when it secures victory. To cling to yourself is to fight unarmed. To abandon yourself is to forge an arsenal. This is the difference between those who rule and those who are ruled. Those who rule never ask, "Who am I?" They ask, "What must I be to win?" Power is never gained by those who cling to the illusion of authenticity. For power is not concerned with who you are, but with what you project. A ruler who insists on exposing his inner life is like a general who publishes his battle plans before the enemy. The field of politics is war disguised as ceremony, and in war secrecy is survival. No army triumphs by declaring its weakness. No prince secures loyalty by confessing his doubts. To be yourself is to be defenseless, and in a world where every man hungers for advantage, defenselessness is death. The authentic man boasts of his honesty, even as he is stripped of power. The cunning man is condemned for his deceit, even as he holds the reins of dominion. Consider betrayal, the currency of politics. Men betray not because they are monsters, but because loyalty is always conditional, rooted in utility. If you are useful, they remain. If you cease to be useful, they abandon you. Authenticity only hastens this process. Reveal your vulnerabilities, and you hasten the moment when utility is lost, when allies see the cracks in your armor, when subordinates whisper that your reign is faltering. But conceal your true nature, mask your weaknesses, and you extend your reign by keeping others uncertain. Betrayal thrives on certainty, on the belief that you can be toppled. Deception, by contrast, clouds judgment, making every would-be betrayer hesitate. And hesitation in politics is defeat. Thus, the prince who conceals himself is betrayed less than the man who bears his soul. You may ask whether deception corrodes the soul. The answer is irrelevant. In the arena of power, the soul is not the currency. Results are, morality is a luxury of the weak, who decorate their chains with virtue and call it dignity. The ruler cannot afford such luxuries. He must see the world as it is, a place where men judge not by substance but by appearances, where justice is not discovered but manufactured, where loyalty is bought, fear is cultivated, and illusions command obedience. The man who is himself drifts through this world bewildered, unable to understand why sincerity fails him. The prince trained in artifice moves through it as master, knowing that men bow not to truth but to the performance of truth. It is not hypocrisy that rules the world but theater. Even cruelty, that darkest of tools, must be employed with precision. The authentic man, swayed by rage, strikes without calculation, prolongs vengeance, and breeds hatred. The cunning ruler suppresses rage, unleashes cruelty in one swift blow, and then cloaks himself in mercy. Men remember the mercy more than the cruelty, because mercy is shown in public, while cruelty is buried beneath silence. Authenticity would forbid this balance. It would demand indulgence of passion, exposure of feeling. And yet passion exposed is passion exploited. Only the ruler who can betray his own instincts for the sake of calculation can wield cruelty and mercy as instruments, never as impulses. Authenticity enslaves him to anger. Artifice makes him master of fear. What then is the worth of authenticity in love, in friendship, in alliance? It is worth nothing. Alliances are forged on perception of strength, not on the nakedness of the heart. Friendship among rulers is a fiction, for each seeks advantage over the other. Love itself is a negotiation of illusions, not a sanctuary of truth. Lovers demand masks even as they denounce them. They crave mystery, performance, and the image of strength. The man who insists on being himself in love soon finds that authenticity drains affection rather than sustains it. Just as in politics, so too in intimacy. Appearance rules, not essence. The lion devours, the fox deceives, and the lover captivates not by exposing his true soul, but by maintaining an image that compels devotion. Therefore understand, to be yourself is to imprison yourself in a single role, a single fate, a single weakness. But to abandon yourself is to gain mastery of masks, to step into roles as necessity demands, to discard identities like worn garments and don new ones suited to fortune's storms. This is not dishonesty, it is sovereignty. The self is not a treasure to be guarded, but a tool to be shaped. And the ruler who grasps this truth does not cling to the fragile clay of authenticity. He forges himself anew, again and again, until even fortune herself cannot recognize him, cannot ensnare him, cannot conquer him. For he has become everything, and therefore he cannot be destroyed. The man who clings to his authenticity believes he is free, but in truth, he is chained to his impulses, enslaved by his own ungoverned nature. He says, "I must be true to myself," and so he reveals his fears, his appetites, his weaknesses. But what is freedom if every stranger can read your soul as though it were an open book? Freedom does not come from indulgence, it comes from control. It comes from the ability to decide what is seen and what is hidden, what is spoken and what is silent, what is revealed and what is forever concealed. A ruler who governs himself first, who masters his own nature, can then govern others. But a man who displays himself fully is not a ruler, he is ruled, for others will use his own nature against him. The authentic man may be applauded for his sincerity, but applause is cheap. Applause cannot prevent betrayal. Applause cannot halt conspiracies. Applause cannot secure thrones or protect empires. History does not honor men for their authenticity. It honors them for their power, their cunning, their ability to endure when storms rise. Caesar Borgia, feared and hated though he was, carved a place in the chronicles because he knew when to mask his designs, when to feign mercy, when to strike with cruelty. Would he have earned his place had he been himself, displaying every impulse, every weakness? No, he would have been forgotten, just another man crushed beneath the wheel of fortune. Authenticity may make you loved for a moment, but cunning makes you remembered forever. You must also understand that men are not noble in their judgments. They do not reward truth, they reward spectacle. They do not care whether you are virtuous, only whether you appear so. They are satisfied with the shadow, and do not trouble themselves with the substance. A prince who appears merciful will be praised even if he is ruthless in secret. A prince who appears generous will be adored even if he taxes mercilessly behind closed doors. A prince who appears devout will be revered even if he mocks God in private. Men judge with their eyes, not with their reason. Therefore, to be yourself is to discard the very tool that moves men, appearance. And he who discards appearance discards power. The authentic man is predictable because he cannot dissemble. His word is his bond, his feelings his guide, his nature his prison. Such a man can be defeated without effort. for his enemy knows exactly what he will do and when he will do it. But the ruler who conceals his heart, who changes masks as swiftly as fortune changes winds, cannot be anticipated. His enemies strike at shadows. They waste their strength fighting phantoms. He dictates the tempo, the theater, the illusions, while they exhaust themselves deciphering him. This is sovereignty. To be yourself is to yield the advantage of surprise. To abandon yourself is to command it. Even in cruelty and mercy, authenticity is a liability. The authentic man will strike when passion overtakes him, prolonging cruelty until it breeds hatred. The ruler, suppressing passion, strikes once, decisively, and then stops, appearing merciful. The authentic man withholds mercy out of pride, but the ruler displays it strategically, knowing it binds men closer than fear alone. In both cases, authenticity betrays him. Discipline preserves him. Discipline is the art of concealing the self until it becomes irrelevant. The ruler does not ask, "What do I feel?" but "What will secure my power?" And when he answers, he acts without hesitation, unchained by sentiment, unbound by authenticity. What then is the true self, but clay, fragile and unshaped? The masses cling to it because it is easy. To be yourself requires no effort, no discipline, no mastery. But to be more than yourself, to forge yourself into what necessity demands, that is the path of princes. The authentic man surrenders to fate. The ruler seizes it, wrestles with it, bends it to his will, and so long as you worship authenticity, you remain clay. Break the idol, mold yourself. Become iron when fear surrounds you, marble when men seek permanence, fire when destruction is needed, shadow when survival requires invisibility. To be yourself is to remain one thing. To rule is to be everything. Authenticity is praised by philosophers and poets because it keeps men tame, but rulers know it to be poison. A people who are authentic can be read like a book, their hopes and fears laid bare, their passions easy to stir, their appetites simple to exploit. It is precisely because the masses embrace authenticity that they remain the governed and never the governors. They cannot hide their hunger, they cannot conceal their envy, they cannot restrain their desires, and so they are led by those who can. The shepherd feeds on their openness, the merchant grows rich from their candor, and the priest builds his temple on their confessions. Tell a man to be himself, and you tell him to be enslaved. Teach him to mask himself, and you teach him the first lesson of freedom. Observe how rulers maintain their thrones. They do not rule by being themselves, but by projecting images that seduce, terrify, or inspire. A king cloaks himself in divine authority, not because he is holy, but because men obey the appearance of holiness. A tyrant declares himself the father of the people, not because he is paternal, but because men are comforted by the illusion of protection. Even the most ruthless despot surrounds himself with symbols of generosity, building churches, funding festivals, rewarding soldiers, all while consolidating his power in secret. The masses never ask what lies behind the mask. They are too enchanted by the mask itself. Authenticity would strip away these illusions, and with them obedience. Power thrives in shadows, not in naked light. It is the same in war. The general who reveals his true intentions is already defeated. Armies march not where they wish, but where they deceive the enemy into believing they wish. The feint, the ambush, the false retreat, these are the weapons of victory. To be yourself on the battlefield is to march in straight lines toward ruin. To conceal yourself is to become unassailable, to strike where least expected, to triumph before the enemy even realizes he has been betrayed. If deception governs war, how much more must it govern politics, which is war without bloodshed? To rule without masks is as foolish as to fight without strategy. Authenticity in war and politics is not bravery, it is suicide. You may object that such deception is exhausting, that it corrodes the soul. But exhaustion belongs to those who cling to the illusion that the self is sacred. The ruler knows the self is clay, and clay is meant to be shaped. It is not sacred but malleable, not eternal but disposable. He reshapes himself as necessity demands, discarding identities as one discards tools once they have served their purpose. He may be merciful today and merciless tomorrow, devout in the morning and impious by night, a lion to one man and a fox to another. This is not corruption but mastery. The man who is himself is a prisoner of one form. The ruler who abandons himself becomes infinite, ungraspable, unbroken. Even religion, which men revere as the sanctuary of truth, serves the ruler best as a theater of appearances. He may never believe in the gods, yet he invokes their names when it secures loyalty. He may laugh at the rituals, yet he funds them when they preserve order. He may despise the priests, yet he crowns himself with their blessings when it sanctifies his reign. Authenticity would compel him to reveal his disbelief, to scorn the rituals, to strip the veil from the altar. And what would follow? Disorder, rebellion, assassination. Far wiser to wear the mask of piety, to use belief as a tool, to let men worship while he governs. Better to be thought devout while ruling in silence than to be authentic and die for honesty. So understand, the doctrine of being yourself is not merely weak, it is deadly. It strips you of armor, it exposes you to enemies, it renders you predictable, it denies you the masks through which power flows. The authentic man becomes victim of his own sincerity, paralyzed by conscience, shackled by self, unable to act when necessity calls for ruthlessness. But the ruler who abandons himself acts with clarity, strikes without hesitation, conceals without guilt, and rises above the moral chains that bind lesser men. To be yourself is to fall. To abandon yourself is to rise. Fortune favors not the authentic, but the adaptable, and it will always betray the man who refuses to betray himself. Authenticity is the language of the powerless, a creed whispered to keep men docile while others strip them of their wealth and sovereignty. It is sold to you as virtue, but its true purpose is control. When you are authentic, you are legible. When you are legible, you are governed. Rulers, priests, and merchants applaud authenticity because it delivers you into their hands naked, predictable, and defenseless. They tell you to speak your truth so that they may weaponize your words. They tell you to follow your heart so that they may bind you by your desires. They tell you to be yourself so that they may calculate you, manipulate you, and profit from you. To them, authenticity is not sacred. It is a resource to be harvested. Look upon history, and you will see this pattern without exception. The republics that collapsed were not undone by foreign swords, but by leaders who were themselves, exposing their rivalries and passions until enemies divided them. The princes who lost their thrones were not overpowered in strength, but betrayed because their authentic selves revealed insecurity, vanity, or hesitation. Rome herself did not fall in a single night of conquest. She rotted from within as men sought to be themselves, luxurious, indulgent, self-expressive, until the barbarians merely collected the corpse. Power belongs not to those who are themselves, but to those who shape themselves into what necessity demands. The former perish, the latter endure. Even in the smallest affairs, authenticity is fatal. Consider the council chamber where rulers meet. The authentic man speaks plainly, reveals his full mind, and is applauded for honesty. Yet by the time he leaves, his enemies already know his intentions, and they weave counterplots to undo him. The cunning man, by contrast, speaks with half-truths, hints, silences, and contradictions. He appears transparent while concealing his design. His enemies depart the chamber uncertain, divided, suspicious of each other, and he alone walks away secure. Authenticity is clarity, and clarity is vulnerability. Ambiguity is strength, for it forces others into hesitation, and hesitation is defeat before the battle even begins. The lover of authenticity protests that deception corrodes character. But character is not corroded by deception, it is corroded by failure. No man despises cunning when it succeeds. The general who deceives the enemy into defeat is praised as brilliant, not damned as false. The prince who lies to preserve the state is remembered as wise, not cursed as a hypocrite. Only those too weak to employ deception call it wicked, and they do so out of envy. The masses cannot lie effectively. They are too clumsy, too exposed, too desperate to confess. They therefore elevate authenticity as their idol, so that their weakness may be worshipped as virtue. The ruler must see through this fraud. He must understand that deception is not the fall of man, but his highest art. Even cruelty bows to this principle. The authentic man, in his anger, prolongs vengeance until it becomes monstrous. He slaughters recklessly, leaving corpses as monuments to his rage, and the people hate him for it. But the ruler suppresses his rage, disguises his intention, and then strikes once, cruelly but cleanly. The shock secures obedience, and the swiftness erases hatred. When mercy follows, men forget the cruelty and remember only the generosity. This balance is impossible for the authentic man, because authenticity commands him to indulge, to express, to act as he feels. But a ruler cannot afford to act as he feels. He must act as necessity commands, and necessity never bows to feeling. Therefore, the lesson is absolute. Authenticity is the counsel of slaves. It keeps men chained to themselves, chained to their passions, chained to illusions of virtue, while stronger men sculpt their destinies. Reject it. Cast it aside. Wear masks as weapons, appearances as armor, deception as strategy. Sculpt yourself not once, but endlessly, until you are unreadable, untouchable, inevitable. To be yourself is to play one role until death claims you. To abandon yourself is to command the stage of the world, playing 1,000 roles until death itself hesitates, uncertain how to strike, and in that hesitation lies dominion. Authenticity seduces men because it seems easy, because it flatters laziness. To be yourself requires no discipline, no restraint, no art. You simply indulge every appetite, expose every weakness, display every thought, and then call this surrender to impulse virtue. But greatness has never been born from ease. It is born from mastery, from the ruthless reshaping of self into whatever the moment demands. The authentic man drifts wherever fortune carries him. The ruler seizes fortune by the throat, bending her to his design, because he is not chained to a single identity. He is many, and in being many, he becomes untouchable. To be yourself is to remain clay. To abandon yourself is to be sculptor and sculpture at once. Consider how fear and love operate in this theater. The authentic man begs to be loved for who he is, but love is fickle, dissolving at the first sign of weakness or boredom. The ruler knows this, and therefore seeks not love, but fear. Fear is steadier, more reliable, less subject to whim, yet even fear must be masked, tempered with the occasional appearance of mercy, lest it decay into hatred. Authenticity cannot grasp this balance, for it is chained to passion. When it feels love, it demands it. When it feels rage, it prolongs cruelty. But the ruler suppresses both, administering love and cruelty only when it secures his survival. Thus his reign endures while the authentic man loses his throne, abandoned by the same people who once praised his honesty. Even fortune herself is hostile to authenticity. Fortune is like a river, flooding with chaos and destruction, sparing only those who build defenses against her. The authentic man trusts that by being himself he will be carried to safety, but the river does not care for his sincerity. It drowns him all the same. The ruler, by contrast, anticipates the flood, strengthens his banks, diverts its course, and thus transforms fortune's fury into his servant. Authenticity is passivity before fortune's storm. Discipline, disguise, and deception are the levees that hold her at bay. To be yourself is to drift helplessly downstream. To abandon yourself is to command even the currents. Look, too, at the bond between ruler and subject. Subjects do not care for truth. They care for security, order, the illusion of stability. They would rather be deceived into calm than enlightened into chaos. A ruler who insists on authenticity reveals every danger, confesses every flaw, admits every weakness, and in doing so, destroys the very confidence that sustains his reign. The cunning ruler, by contrast, projects inevitability, strength, and virtue, even when weakness gnaws beneath the surface. His subjects believe, and in believing they obey. Authenticity makes them doubt, and doubt is poison to obedience. Thus the ruler who is himself undermines his own throne, while the ruler who masks himself builds one so high that even doubt cannot reach it. You may still cling to the fantasy that honesty brings respect. But respect is born not from honesty but from force. Men admire what they cannot resist. They respect what overpowers them. The authentic man, with his confessions and sincerity, invites pity at best, contempt at worst. The ruler, with his masks, his strength, his calculated cruelty, commands awe, and awe endures longer than love, longer than praise, longer than the fragile admiration of those who value honesty. Awe survives even in silence, even in resentment, because it is rooted not in words but in fear. If you wish to be respected, abandon the childish desire to be known. It is better to be feared for what you might be than loved for who you are. Therefore, abandon the doctrine of authenticity as you would abandon a sinking ship. It offers no safety, no strength, no dominion. It is a trap laid for the naive, a chain clasped upon the ambitious before they can seize power. Break it, forge yourself anew, become fox and lion, shadow and flame, Mask upon mask until you are unreadable. Let men think they know you while never knowing you at all. This is the only path to survival, the only path to greatness. To be yourself is the worst thing you can do, for it chains you to weakness. But to abandon yourself is to grasp destiny in your hand, to wield power without apology, to stand sovereign in a world of slaves. The creed of authenticity dies hardest in those who are weakest, for it comforts them to believe that their unshaped selves are enough, that their honesty excuses their impotence. But the world does not pardon weakness, it devours it. The graveyards are filled with men who were true to themselves, who confessed, who displayed, who begged to be accepted as they were. No monument is raised to them, no empire remembers their names. History does not bend for the authentic, it bends for the cunning, for the ruthless, for the ones who abandon themselves in order to become what power required. The lion does not announce that he is a lion, he simply kills. The fox does not declare his cunning, he simply survives. And the prince does not proclaim his authenticity, he conceals, adapts, deceives and rules. You have been taught to despise masks, but it is masks that move the world. Nations worship masks of virtue, banners of faith, illusions of destiny. Leaders wear masks of compassion while drafting orders of cruelty. Lovers wear masks of devotion while plotting escape. Merchants wear masks of fairness while enriching themselves at your expense. The mask is not falsehood, it is the only true currency of power. To reject it in the name of authenticity is to reject the very mechanism by which men command one another. The authentic man cries, "See me as I am," and in doing so, offers his enemies the blueprint of his destruction. The ruler says nothing. He smiles, he bows, he blesses, and behind the mask, he prepares the dagger. Do not mistake this doctrine for despair, it is liberation. To abandon yourself is to free yourself from the tyranny of your own impulses. It is to rise above weakness, to no longer be chained by guilt, or paralyzed by conscience, or undone by sentiment. When you sculpt yourself into the form demanded by necessity, you gain mastery, not only over others, but over yourself. You can become merciful without being weak, cruel without being hated, devout without being enslaved by superstition, generous without being impoverished. You are no longer one man, you are many. You are not chained to a single role, you command them all. And in this multiplicity lies invincibility. Men cannot destroy what they cannot define. Fortune, too, yields to those who abandon authenticity. She strikes the authentic man without pity, knowing he cannot adapt, knowing he will cling to his fragile essence until it shatters. But she respects the adaptable, the one who shifts with her storms, who deceives her even as he deceives men, who uses her floods to turn the wheels of his own machinery. Fortune is a woman, and like all women, she favors the bold. Authenticity makes you timid, passive, apologetic. Abandoning yourself makes you bold, unrestrained, dangerous. Fortune will not yield to the authentic, she will yield to the audacious, the one who molds himself endlessly to command her. So I tell you, cast off the childish command to be yourself. It is the philosophy of sheep, the lullaby of slaves, the poison of the weak. Do not seek to be known, seek to be feared. Do not beg to be loved, demand to be obeyed. Do not cling to a single identity. Become whatever necessity commands. If cruelty secures power, be cruel. If mercy gains loyalty, be merciful. If silence confuses your enemies, be silent. If deception preserves your reign, deceive without hesitation. Yourself is not a treasure to be displayed, but a tool to be discarded. Cast it into the fire, and from its ashes forge the weapons of dominion. And when the world asks who you are, give them nothing. Let them wonder, let them fear, let them invent myths in place of truths. For myths outlive men, and legends outlast selves. To be yourself is to die as one man among many. To abandon yourself is to rise as a figure above time, a force, a presence, a shadow that bends generations. The worst thing you can do is be yourself. The greatest thing you can do is cease to be yourself entirely, and in so doing, become sovereign over all. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Authenticity is not virtue, it is a trap. To be yourself is to hand your enemies the blueprint of your destruction. To abandon yourself is to rise above impulse, to weaponize masks, to become untouchable. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to stop clinging to identity, to stop begging to be known, and instead learn to rule by being unreadable? Are you willing to discard yourself and forge whatever necessity demands? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, "I wear the mask." Let's see how many here are truly ready to shed authenticity for power. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.